And away we go. So welcome today, everybody. My name is Josh Brothheim. I'm the training manager at Sumo Logic. And today we're going to be doing a workshop together, looking at AWS Observability with Sumo Logic. So we're going to be together for the next 2 hours. I'm going to let you guys out early, so probably closer to an hour 45, maybe an hour and a half, depending on questions and things like that. I hope you'll find today's session fun. We're going to be going over some slides, but then we're going to be getting into the application. So today we're going to look at a feature that we call Root Cause Explorer, which is a really great tool. We'll talk about the benefits of that. We'll talk about observability, how AWS fits into Sumo's solution, and how we can help observe AWS better, pretty simply. And then we're going to actually set up the AWS observability solution for Sumo Logic. So today, for the last hour or so, we'll go ahead and actually set up the link between Sumo Logic and AWS. If you have the account to do it on your own, we'd love for you to participate in the labs. If you don't, that's fine. You can just sit back and watch, me drive. So either way is fine. I have a couple of my peers on the line as well, and just want to give them a shout out and introduce them real fast. So from AWS, we have Dilip Rajan. So he's representing AWS today. So if there's any questions, feel free to put them into the chat or the Q&A. Actually, the Q&A is probably a better spot, and he can help answer them. You guys are on mute. We can unmute, but probably prefer to go to the Q&A option. So Dilip, you're out there?
Hey, Josh. Hi,
Hey.
everybody. Thanks for joining. Just a quick introduction. Dilip Rajan. I'm a partner solutions architect with the AWS. I support Sumo Logic in my day-to-day role and responsibilities. I'm happy to help take any feedback about AWS in general, specifically about AWS Control Tower, and answer any questions as well.
Great. Thank you, Dilip. And then I also have John Meredith. He's from Sumo Logic, one of my peers. Well, they're both my peers, I guess. But John Meredith, he's going to be assisting on the chat and the Q&A, but more from a Sumo Logic standpoint. So John, you out there? Put you on the spot there, but if not, that's okay.
I am, Josh.
There you are, John.
So, yeah, good afternoon, folks, or good morning, depending on what time zone, or good evening, depending on what time zone you're in. I'm the East Coast instructor, so I'm based in New England, specifically up in New Hampshire. So welcome to this training session.
Great. Thanks, guys. So that's our cast of characters here. Like I said, we're going to get going here. Questions in the Q&A. I'll pause periodically, certainly, and yeah, away we go here. So here's an agenda. We'll stick to it pretty closely. Well, like I said, we'll probably be ending closer to 10:30 time. Some of these steps don't take as long as need be. And we may take a break in there. I might throw a 5-minute break in there, depending on how things are going. There's a period when we're doing the CloudFormation template that there's kind of time to kill, so to speak. So we might take put a little break in there, but let's keep going here. So the agenda. Sumo Logic, you may be familiar with us. You might be our customers. If you are, thank you for being a part of our family. If you're not, just want to give you a quick overview, not trying to sell you on Sumo Logic, but I think it is important to understand what we do and how we fit into this whole process of observability. Specifically though, Sumo Logic, continuous intelligence platform is what we're going to talk about today and talk about now. We do have a security product. I'm not really focusing on that right now, but it's important to remember that digital transformation requires continuous intelligence, and businesses are leveraging a new category of software, the CI, that continuous intelligence. Real-time analytics and insights from a single cloud-native platform across multiple use cases to speed decision-making and driving world-class customers. And so that's where we can really help you. Using our analytics across your operations, security, business, and global intelligence data provides you that continuous awareness to impact your results. And so I'm going to talk about these top 4 dashboards or pictures, if you will, briefly as well. So with operational intelligence, we can assist you in, or you can assist yourself really in figuring out what systems are up and running. What is your MTTI and MTTR, those mean time to identify resolves that are really more important every day. That's really the metric that people are being judged on to some degree. And then other system health concerns. Security intelligence, I alluded to it just a moment ago, but we can determine who is using root access in your environment. Is a person logging in from multiple locations simultaneously and has your SIM picked up on it as an actionable item? These are all things Sumo can help with. Business intelligence, certainly. What pages are people frequently viewing on your website? What are they ordering? If you ran a marketing campaign, was it successful? And then from a global intelligence standpoint of how am I doing compared to other companies and observing your data worldwide? Using your data-driven intelligence to extract real-time insights and business value from massive volumes of machine data generated in the forms of logs, metrics, metadata, traces, and other telemetry. So all that data, you kind of throw in Sumo Logic and we help you with it. This data can come from your apps, microservices, cloud systems, infrastructure, SSAS service, mobile devices, everything we see here in this year data column. A lot of these you may be using, certainly multiples of those. Continuing on with that, we have built-in apps. And so with the analytic portion that can provide you immediate functionality that will probably exceed 85% of your immediate query and analytic needs. We won't talk about apps too much today, but they are a great feature of Sumo Logic. And actually, if there's time later, I might just pull one out just to have it take a look at it. Our stack also includes support for, as I mentioned, SaaS, and can integrate with various third-party apps like Slack and Discord via webhooks. Also can be integrated with ServiceNow. And then the analytics that our analytics feature multi-latency, where the information is very secure. That's really important, the security of your information. We have advanced analytics and machine learning in our application, so you can very easily plot data on a map, use machine learning to identify new security threats. Because we're in the cloud, which is a very important feature of Sumo Logic, we were built in the cloud, born in the cloud. We are elastic and can scale to the environment based on demands. We support APIs so that companies can incorporate Sumo Logic into other products or other uses. And we put the security of our customers first. Kind of goes without saying, but I think it is important to say. Sumo Logic, we adhere to the host of industry standards. We go through the attestations as they come up every year or whatever cycle it appears on. Current security certifications, as you see here on the right-hand side of the screen. PCI, SOC 2, HIPAA, and FedRAMP is really the big thing that we got a few months ago. So we became FedRAMP compliant or authorized, whatever the proper wording is there, which is really a big milestone for us and for our federal customers. And then finally, your people, meaning you can achieve continuous collaboration across DevOps, engineering, IT, customer success, kind of et cetera, with insights across multiple user cases from a single source of truth to facilitate collaborative thinking and speed decision making. So these are all things that Sumo Logic can help you with, and we're going to see in real time how Sumo does this. But before we do, want to talk a little. Oh, I kind of skipped over that slide a little bit too quickly. I want to talk about end-to-end observability with Sumo Logic. I think it's important for us to just kind of not level set necessarily, but make sure that we're clear on what we're talking about. And looking at definitions of monitoring and observability so that we're all on the same page. Because a lot of people equate observability to monitoring. You're looking at something, they kind of both fill that action, if you will. But when we dig deeper, we see it's not just about seeing when something goes wrong, but what's causing it, what areas it's impacting, and how can we correct it before it impacts more customers or more parts of the application. So how is observability different from monitoring? My definition's right here. Monitoring is about telling you the state of a system by looking at the parts that have been configured to be monitored. If a part of the system isn't monitored, then we have no idea what's happening there. And knowing something is wrong is quite important. Observability goes beyond monitoring by bringing together those sources of data, like I started to mention earlier, of the logs, the metrics, the traces. This gives us a broader view and a deeper context. And knowing something is wrong and being able to find out why is really, really critical. So observability takes it, I guess, a step further, you could say. Now, observability requires, I got some fancy graphics here. There we go, starting to load up. But what we're showing here is that observability requires more data and richer analytics as you go from an alert to the problem resolution. And so there's two key requirements for an observability solution, any observability solution. First, the observability solution should be able to handle large-scale data sets. While monitoring and diagnosing requires working with some amount of data, it's in that troubleshooting phase where the observability system should be able to handle unlimited amounts of data from those sources, those logs, metrics, and traces. And this is a challenge for many observable solutions that don't have a high-end, highly scalable solution. Since we're built on that cloud native architecture, Sumo Logic enables ingestion and storage of any amount of data in that highly elastic and flexible way. And then secondly, the observable solution also needs to have a very scalable analytics engine. Observability requires you to analyze lots of data to machine learning and other initiative search-driven analytic capabilities. And as a large-scale machine data analytics platform, Sumo Logic provides out-of-box capabilities to support the ingestion and analytics of almost any amount of data. And so what we're trying to show here is as we go a little bit deeper into figuring out what the problem is through observability, more data is required. At the surface, to figure out what has gone wrong, you don't need much data. You're really monitoring at that point. And as described, you're figuring out what's going on, or you've set up a monitor to determine what's going on, but you haven't figured out why and where. And so we need to go, or you need to go deeper, and that's going to require more data. Bring in more data to figure out where things have gone wrong. And then finally, and this is the portion we'll be focusing, at least for the root cause explorer portion today, is the troubleshooting of why and how. And that requires a lot more data. So as we go deeper, we need more data, and a good system should be able to handle that increase in data, and we can. Continuing with the unified observability platform, just a couple more on observability. So bear with us, and then we'll get into app. But one aspect to achieve end-to-end reliability is that unified observability platform. Excuse me. So what does that mean? Well, starting on the left-hand side of the screen, it means it's required to get all bits of data telemetry to perform the tasks that teams who are in charge of reliability, DevOps, SecOps, from each and every layer that affects the application. This data could be coming from your host, your servers, application components like database security, cloud infrastructure like AWS that we're going to be focusing on today, Kubernetes clusters, but et cetera. You can even go on beyond that in your CI/CD pipeline, your CDN services, load balancers. There's a lot of data out there. And it's required to have all that relevant data in the Sumo Logic platform for visibility. And so this will allow you to monitor alerts, giving you the what happens, diagnosing using trace spans to figure out where it's coming from. And then in step 3, this troubleshooting, and as I alluded to a moment ago, using root cause analysis, among other things, to figure out, do we have too many alerts from the tracing, and with Root Cause Explorer, what's going on, to really getting into the troubleshooting step there. Now, who is this observability going to help? I think I've sold you on the importance of observability. Bit of a tongue twister there, and hopefully mention at least that Sumo Logic can assist you with that. But once again, who does this help? So what personas, what teams in the organization, what value do they get from observability? Well, the SREs, the DevOps team, those people that are responsible for monitoring the health of the application, they need observability so they can quickly monitor, diagnose, and troubleshoot application health issues. Observability is also going to help the software engineer on the team by providing visibility into the software pipeline. By collecting information about the software pipeline and identifying issues with the software delivery process, teams can improve the quality as well as the delivery of their application. And then observability is also going to help security. Those teams that need to ensure that the security posture of their applications are being met. And what's unique about Sumo Logic, the observability solution, is that it addresses the needs of all these teams and personas in one integrated platform. Finally, just to wrap up observability, I have a quote that I think is funny. I enjoyed it at least. But what the quote says, well, it says we replaced our monolith with microservices so that every outage could be more like a murder mystery. But what you're going to see as we start to get into Root Cause Explorer is it's going to give you, well, Sumo Logic in general, but specifically Root Cause Explorer, it's going to start to give you the ability to start to figure out that it was Professor Plum in the observatory with the wrench. You're going to start to be able to see that these actions occurred and they were caused by this, and we're going to show it to you right now. So definitely going to think this this quote fits in for today's discussion. All right, so now let's talk about Sumo Logic and the AWS Observability solution. So we talked about Sumo Logic Observability, but now we need to talk about AWS. So AWS encourages the use of separate AWS accounts to help manage costs and give teams independent administrative control. Additionally, different accounts often have different settings across regions depending on the needs of the specific app. And so once you are in a certain account in a certain region, then there's multitude of services that customers can use to run their apps. And within each service, there's then multiple entities or instances that correspond to it. And often they have their own data monitoring. And the problem here is with all this complex hierarchy, it often leaves vast data silos where it can be difficult to acquire a clear picture of overall AWS service health across regions of accounts. So what we found is, as the numbers say right here, 44% or just about half of our customers, half of AWS customers have 2 or more accounts. About half of the AWS customers also have 2 or more AWS regions. So think about your environment. You might have your production data in one account. You might have your development data in another account. You might have your QA data in a third account. You might have data for your East Coast, for your West Coast, for your international, for Europe, and you start to have all these different environments. As it says on the bottom, this is about a year ago, but probably still accurate. US East 1, US West 2 are most popular for 8% of the customers, but often you'll have more regions or more accounts or more of both. And as I just mentioned or alluded to, you will have multiple services. So once you're in that certain account, there's going to be those multitude of services that can be run, such as all these different things you might be utilizing. And we found that 21 unique AWS services are used by a typical AWS customer. So if you start to explore that out in multiple services across multiple regions, across multiple accounts, the challenge, as it says right there, is visibility. How do you, view it all through a single pane of glass, if you will? And very simply, troubleshooting is complex at that point. The troubleshooting, as it says right there, complicated by service dependencies that are compounded by analyzing metrics and logs and using ad hoc queries. So how can you unify that visibility? Go from that complexity and chaos on the left, excuse me, to the clarity and the root cause on the right-hand side of the screen. With applications moving to the cloud at an ever-increasing rate, there's new challenges in observability are being presented as application architectures inevitably become more complex. Distributed systems are changing the landscape of effectively monitoring, troubleshooting, and securing the application. So Sumo Logic's new, it's been around for a little while, but it's still considered new to us. AWS Observability and Root Cause Explorer solutions break down those data silos and will help you drastically reduce the time it takes to identify and troubleshoot issues with your application by giving you a topological understanding of your AWS environment across multiple accounts and regions. Troubleshooting a production incident is hard. Precious time is lost during an incident because on-call staff, they often have to piece together logs, metrics, trace the data at the application, at the infrastructure levels. They're going to use different tools and the ad hoc queries to find those insights that they need. And then they need to analyze how services and infrastructures relate to each other before they can assess root cause and plan recovery. In sum, achieving service level objectives is hard. But there's a better way. Root Cause Explorer is going to help us cut down our troubleshooting time from often 20 to 30 minutes to just a few minutes per an incident and accelerate the recovery. So let's go ahead and start to take a look at that. So with Root Cause Explorer, what we're going to do now, sorry, jumped ahead again. Want to introduce Root Cause Explorer as a solution to help us finding, solving, and preventing failures. So what I'm going to do is I do have a slide for it. This is the interface. You will be going into it shortly, but let me talk about it on screen first, and then we'll dive into in-app, which is going to be much more effective. So lots of things going on here, but what we're seeing is for a period of time, we are seeing different events of interest. We call these EOIs, or events of interest. What is happening is the system is looking at all that data that I just alluded to and figuring out when it's normal and when it's not. And that's what drift is representing. Drift is going to be essentially kind of deviation from the norm. So what we have here with our events of interest is we have an x-axis and a y-axis. The x-axis is going to show us time, so our time period. And the y-axis is going to show us drift, deviation from the norm, if you will. And then for a variety of different events of interest types, those are going to be displayed in this section down below here. So we see some errors taking place. We see some latency that's occurring. We see some, we don't see any successes. And we'll start to go into those in more detail just in a moment. But wanted to show just to give a quick screenshot. But let me go and jump into it. Let me just, I think visually touring the system is probably easier. And you'll be doing these in a moment. So let me see. Am I still have this loaded up? Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into new root cause. If you've never been into Sumo Logic before, this is the interface, and you'll have hands-on experience in just a moment, but I'm going to assume many of you have. But today we're going to be using the root cause. So we're going to be going to new and root cause. And once in here, as you saw in the image, we see stuff. But let's start to navigate through this stuff because there's a lot of stuff going on here. Now, at the top of the left of the screen, we have our filters. And let me minimize that guy as well, clean that up a little bit. We have some filters that we can utilize because remember, a lot of data is being ingested into Sumo Logic as I mentioned, log data, metric data, tracing data, AWS data, Kubernetes data, many other possibly sets of data are coming in. And when I look at this view right now, I am telling the system, look at all the data that's coming in. So show me my AWS data, show me my Kubernetes data, show me my application services. And through these filters, I can start to minimize what is being displayed in the hopes or the effect of starting to clean things up. So for example, if I don't want to see, let's say I only want to see AWS data, which is where we're going to be focusing on the exercise shortly, but I can go ahead and turn off my application service data, turn off my Kubernetes data, and now I'm looking at just AWS data that has happened over the past 3 hours. Now, what do I see in here? As I started to mention, I see events of interest in here. Each bubble represents an event of interest, and the legend on the top corresponds to the colors associated. Going over a time span, so over the x-axis of a 3-hour period, and then that y-axis of drift, the deviation. I can go ahead and mouse over on any of these EOIs. So here, for example, I've moused over this, and this is letting me know, or the system is letting me know that there was at about 750 or so, there was an issue with DynamoDB, specifically a bottleneck, specifically at production US East 2. So this was specifically involving our production US East 2 server or environment. And what we're able to see with the root cause explorer is we can start to go back in time and start to see if things are related. Did things cause other things? Now, in this view right here, I'm looking at all my AWS data. Now, I have a lot of different data because as I alluded to, and you may have a lot of data as well. You may have that the different accounts, the different regions. And so what if you want to start to filter down on the data? You want to look at specifically a specific environment. Through the filtering, you can start to do so. So for the account ID, we can go ahead and specify that account. And in this case, in this scenario, I've broken out my accounts into different environments, production, staging, development. If I only want to look at, just for example, staging data, I click on staging. Now my system is filtered, and now I'm just looking at the staging data. Now with my staging data, I might have multiple regions, as we talked about. I can go to my region and say, only show me whichever, maybe just US East 1. And now what I'm looking at here is just staging US East 1 data over the last 3 hours. Now, what can I tell from that data? Is there anything interesting in that data? Well, there's certainly events of interest. Now, these things might be important, critical things. They may not be, but we can at least start to look at them and make that decision. And I can start to mouse on these once again, as I did earlier. So what we're starting to see here is an error, specifically a Lambda error. At the same time, we also start to see, but we also see a DynamoDB bottleneck. Now, are these two related? Are they not? Maybe, maybe not. But the root cause analysis is root cause explorer, excuse me, is at least telling me that these things happened at the same time, and there's possibly some correlation between the two. Going back in time, I can start to see, was there a preceding event that might have caused these bottlenecks? So I can see about an hour before, there was another bottleneck. And then I can start to see here, there was a 500 error. The metric there is 500 errors. Now we're going to use that 500 errors in the example we use in just a moment, so I don't want to go too much deeper and reveal kind of any secrets about this. And I actually do want to start to get you guys into the system so we can play along together. But this is Root Cause Explorer. As you start to click on things, and I know you will when you get in here, we're going to start to see on the right-hand side of the screen the events of interest. We're going to get more detail on them. So I showed when I clicked on the item, the mouse over, but then on the right-hand side, we get detailed information. So here we're starting to see the metrics related to this DB bottleneck. But let's get you guys in the system now. Let's go and do that. This is more fun as a group. So let me, where are my credentials? Here they are. So I'm going to put these training credentials into the chat. If you need any help getting into them, John will assist with that. Oh, beat me to it. All right, John's on the ball this morning. So go ahead and log in to service.sumologic.com, which hopefully you're familiar with, but if you're not, that's fine. Go ahead and log in with the credential or the username of training plus analyst number. And go ahead and select for that number, a 3-digit number. Maybe you want to be training plus analyst, I think 007 has been taken, but training plus analyst 345 at sumologic.com, training plus analyst 981, pick a 3-digit number. And it really doesn't matter if there's overlap, especially for today's exercise. So you don't even need to tell me if you got in or not. Actually, I take that back. Do let me know if you got in. Just you don't need to know me. Let me know what number you chose. That password, pretty critical. It's going to be May, capital M-A-Y, capital L, 0, GIC, exclamation point. So training plus analyst number, password, capital M-A-Y, capital L, 0, GIC, exclamation point. And go ahead and log in. Once you're logged in, if you can go ahead in the chat, just say in. Doesn't really need to be much more fancy than that. Just want to make sure that you guys can get in. If you can't get in or don't want to, you're welcome to just, as I mentioned earlier, kind of just sit back and watch me drive. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, it looks like some of you getting in. I'll kind of tap dance for a few moments just to get a few more, but looks like people are starting to. Let's set, actually, I'll wait for a few more to get in. I don't want to getting ahead of myself here. I'm just excited to do this exercise. And so from a timeline, we'll probably spend about another 15 minutes on Root Cause Explorer, maybe not even that long. And then we'll get into the configuration of Sumo Logic and AWS together. All right, I'll wait for two more. Team viewer. I'll wait for just 2 more people to jump in just to make sure that we have close to a quorum. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. If you need help, though, don't be shy. That's what John's here for. So you're making good use of his time. So I want to set up a scenario. Now that you've logged in, I want to kind of bring you back to where the scenario starts. And like I said, I got excited. So here's the scenario that we're going to be approaching today. And also actually I'm sorry, let me mention the credentials. Let me just go back to that. I should have just told you a little bit more about them. So these credentials that you're going to be using, they are for a shared environment. As you can tell, people may use the same set of credentials. They are cleaned up periodically. leave it up periodically. The password changes for them as well every month. That being said, you're welcome to use these credentials after today. So if you want to utilize these later and you want to go back and check out Root Cause Explorer and play with this more, you're welcome to, or go into other aspects of the system. Just remember, as I just alluded to, it is shared. So don't put anything proprietary in there. Don't put anything you wouldn't want, your CEO to see. Kind of sort of obvious, but still like to kind of state those ground rules. We will also be setting up, as I alluded to, the AWS solution in a few moments or half hour or so. And for those, we'll use a different set of credentials. So for these credentials, we're really just going to be using them now for this exercise. All right, so now that I've warned you about the credentials, not warned you, but told you, let me go back to my scenario here. So wanted to welcome you to our company called Travel Logic. We've been talking about Sumo Logic all day, half an hour, but you may or may not know we have a sister company called Travel Logic. Travel Logic specializes in getting consumers to different vacation spots around the world. You can go to our site and you can buy book hotels, book airfare, get car rentals, all that. This is a fictitious company, but for today, we're going to assume it's a production environment, and we're going to assume that we're doing quite well. Things are returning not to normal, but business is good. We're at Travel Logic, we're making money. Now, how can you help us as a new hire? Congratulations, but what's your role going to be at the company? Well, for today, you're going to be playing a DevOps specialist in Travel Logic. And so specifically what you're going to be focusing on, let's just get right to it, is as a DevOps specialist, you're going to be supporting our mission critical applications on AWS. And we primarily, or you primarily, are going to need to focus on ELB application load balancers, host EC2, and DynamoDB. So think of those as your areas of expertise. Now, what are you going to be doing with this? Well, you're going to want to make sure things stay healthy in these environments. And what you've heard on your first day is that end users are experiencing an outage in the application, which is a problem. If the application's not working, we're not making money, and that's not good for obvious reasons. But specifically, the application error that people are getting is a 500 error. But it's only happening in the US East 1 area over the last 24 hours. So being a DevOps specialist, as it says, your challenge is to troubleshoot and rapidly isolate the root cause. So coming in on your first day, you're told, hey, there's a problem in your area of responsibility with US East 1 and 500 errors, and prove your worth here, go fix it. And not just go fix it, but figure out what's wrong and then how to fix it. As we talked about with monitoring observability, it's not just figuring out that something has gone wrong, we now have figured that out, or we're being told that, but figuring out how to resolve it and what caused the problem in the first place. So we should have all logged in. And now what we want to do is get into, actually, don't do those steps. Let me show you where to go. Let's do this together. So you should all be logged in. And as I started to mention, this is the interface. If you haven't been here, of course, welcome. For today, we're primarily going to just go up to New and go to Root Cause Explorer. And hopefully you're on a screen that looks pretty similar to this. As mentioned, it's probably quite busy, but we're going to start to tune it to just look at what we specifically need. So how do we start to filter down to what we're interested in? Because if we go to the click here to add filters, by default, everything is enabled. And right now I'm looking at Kubernetes data. I'm looking at staging data. I'm looking at US East 2 data. These things are not really relevant for this conversation or this exercise here. So I can utilize these filters to start to turn things on or turn things off. In this case, kind of both. I don't need my application services data. I don't need my Kubernetes data because that's not, we're looking at AWS stuff right now. So when I go to just turn off those two and just keep AWS and host, I'm seeing, well, just AWS data. The problem here, and I don't know it's a problem, but I am seeing more than just US East 1, or more than just prod US East 1. So what I want to do here is I want to start to utilize these filters to filter what is necessary. So I'm going to go to the account ID under AWS and host, and I'm going to select prod because I'm interested in production stuff as my as my job entails or requires. Now, when I choose prod, the screen changes. It cleans up a little bit because I'm looking at less data or filtering down, depending on how you want to look at it. And now I see, less things. Now, I still need to define my region because I don't want to look at US East 2. I just want to look at US East 1. And so I'm going to select US East 1. Now, we were supposed to look at the last 24 hours. Remember, not remember, but by default, it's going to be set to last 3 hours. But we can go ahead and change the time to look at a different time period. By clicking on the time, the -3H here, the little clock icon, we can select the last 24 hours. So what I want you to do is get to a screen that looks pretty close to this. Has root cause Explorer open, hopefully. Only is looking at production data for AWS. Only looking at US East 1 production data for AWS. And is looking for or at a 24-hour period. And I'm just gonna, okay. So go ahead and just want to, like I said, make sure that your screen looks pretty similar to mine. So I'll give everybody a moment or two. If it doesn't, let us know. Okay, looks like everybody's either very quiet or very, I got a yes, so that's good for me. So yeah, let's keep going here. Now what we can do here is we're going to want to focus in. I'm going to kind of cheat here a little bit, but what I want to be for demo purposes, what I really want us to do is focus in on about 6 a.m. Pacific time. These couple events that happened right here. This is our demo data. So this is really where I want the eye to be drawn. So like I said, about 6 a.m., about 5:45 a.m. Pacific time to about 7 a.m. Pacific time kind of covers that area. So, just visually observe these points. But what we can do is we can actually drill in on these or zoom in on them. What I can do is I can click on the left of the first point and then drag it to the right. And as I highlight this, once I let go of the mouse, my screen is just going to zoom in on those 3 points. It's not really anything, just a closer view. So we should now have our 3 points and we should be kind of zoomed in. If not zoomed in, that's okay. I just want you to recognize these 3 points. So now let's go ahead and start to look at these 3 points and start to see what the system is reporting to us or what events it finds interesting. And then, how can we use this to deduce something? So we're going to look first at this error. Well, remember our job was to look at 500 errors or 5XX errors, which represent 500 errors. Well, what do we have right here at about 6:45? We have on production US East 1, our metric of ELB 5XX count is erroring. It's drifting also as well. It's deviating from the norm. We have a lot of errors. Now, just because it says it in this little bubble here, how do I prove to you that we're having a lot of errors? Well, what I see over here is this graph. And what this graph is showing me is kind of history, things going on. And what I'm seeing here is very simply at about 6:45 or so Pacific time, I'm seeing a big spike. So this is kind of proving, and I'll give you more proof in a few moments, but this is kind of proof that there are 500 errors going on. So we have confirmed that there are 500 errors going on at about 6 a.m. Pacific time on our environments that we're concerned about. So great, I've now figured out that there's errors. And monitoring couldn't do that for me. I could have a monitor that could figure this alert. But observability, as mentioned, goes deeper. So great that I found the error, but what caused the error? How do I fix the error? Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go back in time. This error didn't just happen on its own. Something happened or didn't happen, but something caused the error. Something probably in the past, not in the future. It happened to happen before the error. So looking here, what other events of interest occurred around this time? Well, over here, I see on prod US East 1 as well, a bottleneck related to CPU load average. All right, well, load average, if there's a lot of, if load is increased, it could impact 500 errors, certainly. But if I go even further back in time, I see a Dynamo, there we go, a DynamoDB bottleneck. If I click on it, I see the graph showing the abnormality, I guess we could say. and I see, what else do I see here? And I see bottleneck. Oh, and it's the metric for read throttle events. So what I can kind of deduce here, but I still will go a little bit further in it, but what I can kind of assume, not assume, but the data is showing me, is that there was a DynamoDB bottleneck related to the 2 read throttle events. Then there was a bottleneck related to the host. The CPU load averages seem to have spiked. And as a result, the root cause explorer found this error. The 500 errors were being caused. But let's go back and look at this information a little bit differently. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on this one, the first DynamoDB bottleneck. And I'm going to choose the infrastructure tab here, which I don't think I showed yet. The summary tab gives pretty much what it sounds like, a summary. It gives me a summary of what's in the bubble, and then shows me the graphical representation of that. Here's that drift. But the infrastructure tab allows me to go to a different spot in Sumo Logic. And this different spot is going to help me with my observability not use case example. What I can do is I can go ahead and open this event of interest through our entity dashboard. Our entity dashboard gives a very nice dashboard of your or our system. So in this case, we're now looking at AWS data through Sumo Logic. And what we're seeing here, and what I'm going to try and lead you to here, let's see, I hope the data is playing along nicely. Let me expand this out a little bit. It is a test environment, so sometimes the, or demo, so sometimes it doesn't play nice. But what I wanted to show here, oh, there we go. I'm sorry. Let me see if this one's going to show it. So let me go back here. Sorry, I jumped around a little bit too much. So Root Cause Explorer, where we see the events, and then we can actually start to drill into the entity dashboard, as we call it, which is a view of AWS Observability. There we go. Now loaded properly. So what I'm now seeing here is for DynamoDB, I am now seeing information about DynamoDB stuff, EC2 information, Lambda errors, etc. But what I wanted to show you here is I should see my 500 errors in here. Why don't I see my errors? Probably because this is a live. Not live, but just not playing nice. Let me go back here. It kind of ruins the whole kind of grand reveal here if I can't show them. Let's see if they show up here. Let me try one more check. I apologize for that. They should show up right about here. We should see those errors. This is 6 hours here. No, that's, yeah, I apologize for that. That's had the big thing going on. It was working earlier, and now I don't know where my errors went. All right, well, that's really anticlimactic, but yeah, I'm not just going to click around looking for errors. So I want to apologize for that, but let's go back to see what we did see in Root Cause Explorer, because we still saw some helpful stuff. So what we were able to do is, using the filters, we start to filter down and look at everything going on. Now we can, and just we have a few minutes, we might as well just play with it real fast. We can start to turn things, go ahead and reset these filters. And keep in mind, without the filters on, it's going to be quite noisy, but we do start to see all these different events that have occurred. We see events here related to our SE demo environment, related to, I don't even know which environment that is, some tracing data in here. We see all this other environmental data, CLL tracing and training data. And using these filters, we can start to modify them. We also have our advanced filters, which are pretty cool. I didn't point them out, but I should just, yeah, I should, because they are quite helpful. Using the advanced, you can go ahead and look at the positive or negative impacts. So we saw here that some things were the events of interest is a positive thing, where it's a decrease in latency and errors, or it could be negative, which would be an increase in latency and error. So keep in mind that when we're talking about EOI, we're talking about whether it's improved positively or not. And it's important to remember that a positive impact is not always a good thing. So a CPU metric that's dropped significantly may imply problems in a microservice that upstream of the node experienced a drop in CPU utilization. That drift, so you can start to filter in on the drift and start to maybe look at those things that are less significant or more significant. But the drift is the, not to use the word in a definition, but the extent of drift from the expected value of a metric. And classified really as high, medium, or low, in this case using the graphical interface, but a higher intensity EOI typically will require more attention than others. So things that have a more extreme drift, higher drift, are going to be probably more attention getting, not necessarily more concerning. Duration, of course, is just how long a metric has been abnormal. Seasonality, so on a scale of 0 to 100, you can go ahead and start to include seasonality, which can add context and eliminate false positives in time series data that otherwise might look abnormal, due to the presence of different periods. And finally, that's stability, which is going to show EOIs that are more stable are probably more indicative of a root cause than other metrics. So stability can be quite a helpful filter or selection. All right, so what did we look at there? And let me show you the slide so at least we can kind of wrap up on that. But what I wanted to show was a spike here. So what I was trying to show was a spike in the 500 load balancer, because remember we were focused on 500s. And then what we could have done to figure out what caused the outage is utilize, oh, here's screenshots of it. Here we go, the actual root cause. So the actual root cause was due to the spike in the read throttle events. So we saw that, we should have seen that spike. Let me see. Oh, I still have my filters here. Yeah, there's that spike. All right, let's go back to the slide deck. I'm sorry. So the actual root cause was due to the read throttle events being spiked inappropriately. And what I was going to show, or was trying to show, was some log messages that actually allude to that fact that they were the read throttle event was inappropriately adjusted or incorrectly adjusted. So that's what we would have shown or trying to show. Quick more summary of RCE. I want to get into the AWS observability stuff, setting it up because that's more fun and works better. And it's not going to be a demo, it's going to be our real stuff. But RCE, just important to remember the concepts and bodies, that the spikes are going to be a first symptom of an incident. Earlier spikes are going to be related to probable cause. Context and correlation of spikes. Time range is important. You want to look at a section of time when things happened. Connections between resources and services to trace the root cause. Seeing a spike in Dynamo B, then seeing an increase in CPU, there might be a connection there. Associated log exploration. What I was going to try to show was actually seeing the real root cause of somebody at the log entry of somebody actually incorrectly setting a value. And then golden signals for root cause explorer. Golden signals, it's actually a Google thing. Their SREs created it, but it's 4 key metrics to monitor to really keep track of things working correctly or not. Looking at latency, traffic, errors, and saturation. If you're monitoring those 4 key metrics, you're going to be in pretty good shape of monitoring and observing a proper solution. And then with the RCE, we want to find a time range, see those connections, apply those filters, and then view those logs. And that last step kind of flaked out a little bit. But let's talk about the AWS Sumo. Sorry. The Sumo Logic AWS Observability solution. First, wanted to talk about Control Tower. I talk briefly about it. I'm not an expert in Control Tower. Actually, that's one of the reasons Dilip is on the line with us today. But it's an important feature because it's going to, as it says right there, it's going to unify multi-account observability. As I mentioned in the slide, multiple accounts, multiple regions, a lot of stuff to coordinate. And so Control Tower provides that framework to set up and extend a well-architectured multi-account AWS environment based on security and compliance best practices. With AWS Control Tower, as you may or may not know, you can easily provision new AWS accounts using their account factory. The account factory creates new AWS accounts with the baseline security posture, and by doing so enables preventative and detective guardrails. As part of the framework, AWS Control Tower automatically enables AWS CloudTrail. As part of the framework, AWS Control Tower automatically enables AWS CloudTrail and AWS Config, and enables the centralized login to an S3 bucket that might be located in a log archive account. It's going to go ahead and pre-configure some the SNS, the simple notification service topics that other services can subscribe to. Provide federated access to accounts using the AWS SSO. Enable those guardrails to protect the resources that as I mentioned that are being deployed by the Control Tower. And also going to support lifecycle events, so you can configure any additional custom automations as part of the new account creation. So I'm not really going to go too much deeper on Control Tower. If you're using it, great. As you're using it, it's probably been quite helpful, but it's a really helpful way. So if you're not familiar with it, once again, just a great way to handle all those different environments within AWS. So you may be using it for today's exercise, you may not be. And like I said, if you have more questions on Control Tower, Dilip, but we're going to go actually, start to use the Sumo Logic end of here. So, all right, whoop. Slides keep jumping ahead here. All right, so what are we going to do now? Well, now we're going to go ahead and start to set up, possibly using Control Tower, possibly not, depending. But now we're going to go ahead and start to set up the link between Sumo Logic and AWS so that we can observe AWS and Sumo Logic. The prerequisites, I hope we made you aware of them before today. These are them. If you're not able to join along today because you don't have your credentials or whatever, any reason, you feel free, like I said, I've said a few times, I think, to just kind of sit back and watch us drive, that's fine. But to set up this system today, we need AWS credentials. Not we, you need AWS credentials. Collectors and sources, as it says right here, all these different, these couple of things. Now we're going to go through these steps because I'm going to show you how to get things like the access info and a couple other features that you may not be aware of. But hopefully you have these together. All right. So one of the other important things is you're going to need a Sumo Logic account. Now, the account we used earlier of training plus analyst, whatever, is not going to work today for multiple reasons. Yeah, many reasons it won't work. So we want you to sign up for your own Sumo Logic account. Now, if you already have one, great. You have one and you're done. If you don't, though, you can sign up for one for free. So if you go to sumologic.com/sign-up or sign-up, you can sign up for an account. As it says, free 30 days, no credit card needed. You should get it pretty immediately. I'm kind of tap dancing here as well. So if you don't have a Sumo Logic account, please go ahead and register for one. And John's put those that link in there as well. So thanks for doing that. So based on that, what I've just said, hopefully you have the AWS account. Hopefully you have or now have a Sumo Logic account. For the Sumo Logic account, go ahead and open it up. So log into Sumo Logic. Once again, not using the training account. And I guess log into AWS, you might as well get that open. All right. We're just going to get rolling here. Now we're going to deploy this thing. Yeah, just kind of get right into it. So from a solution standpoint, here's this diagram that I've tried to make, showing, kind of what we're doing here today. So here's here are the CloudFormation templates, and we're going to talk about those in a moment and how they set up everything automatically for you, really. And then the AWS account information here. So what's going to happen is through the use of the CloudFormation template, the AWS account is going to be notified, and more complex than that, but essentially be notified, and a stack is going to be created, and then that's going to communicate out to Sumo Logic. And then you'll see your data in Sumo Logic. Data sources, we don't want to get bogged down on this slide either, but I thought this was helpful for some of you. You're not going to be quizzed on it by any means, but just wanted to show the different types of data which are supported, what resources are created, and we'll look at those in a moment when we go through this. But just thought it was a helpful overview for some of you. All right, so let's go ahead and let me provide you a link here as well. So give me a moment here. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and take a break right now. This would be a good spot for one. So let's take a 5-minute break. I'll put my 5-minute timer on. Actually, I'll do 6-minute timer. Give you an extra minute. And when we come back, what we'll do is cancel. That's my 6-minute timer. So when we come back, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll take the Sumo Logic credentials or the account, take the AWS account, put it together, get them configured, get some data sent over, and observe it, see it. So go ahead, grab a snack, grab a little beverage, and then we'll come back and finish up. And certainly any questions about Sumo Logic, about AWS, about Control Tower, about the Northeast of the United States, any of those topics, happy to cover for you. So be back in a few moments, and then we'll continue on. All right, everyone, welcome back. Hopefully you had a nice beverage or a little snack, but let's go ahead and continue. Let's see, you should be able to see my screen. Yep, okay, cool. So starting to talk about AWS observability, starting to get into deploying it. And let me just get back to my slides here. But wanted to talk about CloudFormation. But before I do, I did want to provide you a link to the documentation here that we're going to be using today. So I thought it's important that you have it because. So let me go ahead and put this in the chat. Okay, good. So that link is going to take you to Sumo Logic documentation on how to deploy AWS observability, which is what we're doing right now. So go ahead and grab those steps and let's kind of just talk through them. Like you saw, I have a couple slides on them, but really doing is better than showing. So how are we going to do this? So before we start, we're going to want to make sure that we have our prerequisites, and the prerequisites are those things that I mentioned. So having AWS account, having Sumo Logic account, having data, limited but some, and having access keys and IDs, which I'll show you how to do. Now to set up this, or how do we set this up? What we're going to do is we're going to use what's called a CloudFormation. We're going to use CloudFormation, specifically a CloudFormation template. What is a CloudFormation template, or what is CloudFormation? CloudFormation is AWS's equivalent of Terraform. And what it allows us to do or benefit from it is it's going to allow for the automation of creation, updating, and deletion of multiple AWS resources associated with the given application service via script. Essentially, we're going to fill out a form, which is going to create a script that is going to essentially tell AWS, hey, send my data over to Sumo Logic. That's the gist of it. More technical and more secure than that, but that's really what's taking place. The CloudFormation template, a stack, I think I alluded to the term stack, but essentially the CloudFormation template is going to be, in this case, an existing template. We're going to give you a template to use, making this much easier. And then that template will be used by CloudFormation to create a stack based on the template. So the stack is going to be your setup, your connection. And so we'll see those stacks very soon as well. Observability tagging. This is just to point out, it's important, that when your data comes into Sumo Logic, it's going to be automatically tagged with various labels or metadata in order for it to be enriched so that it makes it easier for you and your peers to locate the data in your environment. So a lot of that is automatic. As you'll see when we get into the CloudFormation template in just 2 or 3 minutes, you'll have the ability to decide on some of those as well. For today, we'll keep everything with the defaults. We'll be very default, just easier. All right, so before you even set up, I've alluded to these once again, though. Having some metrics, having AWS console, this third one you can kind of skip, the user permissions. This is valid. So for the Sumo Logic account that you're going to be using today, the user should have admin rights, or as it says, ideally admin is really just the easiest way to do it, because the system is going to set up a lot of these different features, rules, and other things for us automatically. So on our behalf, the system is going to set up a field extraction rule. It's going to set up a field. It's going to set up a collector and other things. We're going to need the Sumo access key and ID, organization ID and deployment ID, or deployment name. I'll show you how to get that in a few moments. And so that's what we need. Whoops, that's showing a stack. So let's go ahead and start to set this up. So utilizing the link that I sent you, what I want you to do is go to step 1. Step 1 is going to open the CloudFormation template. So we want to go ahead and click on the URL to open or invoke the latest CloudFormation template. When you click on that link, it should bring you into AWS. And so It may ask you to log in, log in with your credentials, of course. And so I'm kind of pausing here just to make sure everyone got up to this step. So far, all we've done very simply is we've opened the link I sent you, the help article, and we've gone to under step 1, clicking the URL to open the CloudFormation template. Now, the next thing we should do, if we haven't done it already, you probably have, is log into Sumo Logic. So make sure that we're now logged into Sumo Logic as an administrator user. You're logged in as that user. So we're going to work with 3 windows right now. Actually, we're going to have 3 things going on. We're going to have Sumo Logic. We're going to have the documentation, and then the CloudFormation template. And let me close that because I don't need that. Now, the first thing is giving the stack a name. The stack is going to really be like this is going to be the setup. For today, give it a name. It's going to be you and your environment, so probably a name that you recognize. Test is always a good one. Whatever. I'm going to call mine training. I'm just not feeling very creative, so mine is a training stack. So it's just going to be really an ID or identification name. Now, this section here, the parameters, this is where we're going to need to get that Sumo Logic information. So we're going to need to make sure that we have the deployment name, the access ID, the access key, and organizational ID. But let's go ahead and see how do we get those things. Some of them are less obvious than others. The first thing is going to be the deployment name. The deployment name is going to be essentially your region, where is your physical, not physical, it's in the cloud, but where is that Sumo Logic instance located? The way to locate that is through this help link right here. So based on, I'll put this in here in the chat, but just to show it to you as well, based on the deployment, or actually vice versa, excuse me. Based on where you log in, what your service endpoint is, the login URL, that will tell you your deployment. So if you log into service.sumologic.com and that's what you see up here, you would be US1, service.sumologic US1. If you see service.us2.sumologic.com, then you're going to be US2. If you see service.eu, you're going to be EU, and kind of etc. The deployment is necessary to know for this use case or this purpose, also for APIs, because you're going to need to append the deployment. So this is something, you don't need to memorize necessarily what deployment you are, but it's helpful to know. So in my case, I'm US1. Most of you are probably US2. That's kind of the more popular one we've been using recently, but use what it says. So I'm going to select US1. Okay. And as I'm going through it, too fast, too slow, just raise your hand, questions, or John's there for this portion. Now we need to create an access key and an ID. Now, there's a few ways to do this in Sumo Logic. As you may know, with Sumo Logic, there's many ways to do the same thing. But what I want to do here is I want to go into the application. I want to go to the black bar. So on the far left, you may have this black bar exposed, or you may not. Expose it. Sounds a little weird to say, but go ahead and expose that black bar. And then we want to go down, and this may seem counterintuitive, and it is a little bit. We want to go down to your username. So go ahead to your username, click on it, and then choose preferences. So once again, black bar, bottom left, your name, click preferences, and now here we get a lot of the information we need. So now let's go ahead and look at the CloudFormation template. And feel free to jump ahead. I'm sorry if you know this stuff already. Feel free to go ahead and just start it because we're going to keep the rest of the defaults. But so we need the access ID and access key. So now that we're on the preferences pages, we're going to go to My Access Keys and add access key. The name doesn't matter. It's really an identifier for you. I'm just going to use my initials like I've done a million other times. I'm going to click Create Key. At this point, I am going to be given or provided a ID and a key. This ID and key is going to be used for this. It's also used for the APIs. It's also used for collection setup. It's used in a few other places. I'm going to simply copy the information as labeled. So I'm going to copy my access ID. Into the access ID box. I'm going to get that access key. I'm going to copy it and put that in the access key box. Now, finally, I'm going to need one more piece of information here. I'm going to need the Sumo Logic organization ID. The way to get that is just to close out of this key. We don't need this anymore. We're done. And at the top of the preferences screen should be an organizational ID of some combination of letters and numbers. Copy that whole thing and drop that into the organization ID. And then I would, like I've been saying, I'd just keep everything with the default. So I'd recommend that when you delete, what the step is when you delete Sumo Logic resources, the stack will be deleted. So if you delete it in Sumo Logic, it will delete this stack, which is a great way to clean it up. It makes things easier. So I'd leave that as true. Now, the last thing we do need is an account alias. This is purely, once again, just identification. So I'm just going to use training 2 again. Just once again, I'm not creative with my names. The rest here, we're going to keep defaults, but let's, at least take a glance at what these things are. This one is important. This is kind of the whole reason we're doing this, is to install the observability apps and alerts, but this is going to do so for you. So what this is going to do is automatically set up alerts, automatically set up apps. And I alluded to the apps this morning or earlier, but we're going to see them in action in a few moments. These are great features of Sumo Logic. It's going to present our data back to us in a way that we understand. Excuse me, sorry. And then these other options, kind of glossing over them intentionally, just other options you can set. What kind of CloudWatch metrics do you want to create? Do you want to do CloudWatch or Kinesis Firehose? And when you label the data as it's ingested, do you want to use default names or do you want to use custom names? And we use defaults, and defaults are usually good enough. So once you have this all entered, and that actually just the 1 and 2 section entered, everything else you can keep the defaults. We're going to run this. So we're going to go to acknowledge that. We're going to create IAM resources with custom names, which are going to be the names we created. And then the capabilities are going to be auto expanded. So now we're going to create Stack. When we create Stack, now AWS is taking that information, trying to log in and trying to connect to Sumo Logic. Not trying, it is, or hopefully it is. And now we start to see the steps that are going to take place. So here we see our stacks, which are other environments that have been set up. And here you see there's been a few of them. This is one I did on Friday, I think. But now I start to see mine. So here's my training stack being created. And here are going to be all the steps that are going to be used to create that stack. And we can take a look at those visually. To do so, we can just go ahead and click on the stack name, click on events, and now we see what's going on, what the system is doing. So of course, user needs to initiate, the resource creation needs to occur, and starting to create these common resources. And this is going to take a little while. It's going to go through, this is the one I did last week. It's going to go ahead and create common resources. It's going to set up the Sumo Lambda metrics, the Sumo ALB metrics, et cetera, et cetera. So this is going to take a little bit of time, and kind of tap dancing here, kind of not. I mean, kind of more kind of am, but so now what should be occurring is data should be coming to Sumo Logic, or the configuration of that should start to be set up. So let me go back to my slides here. And so as described here, you should start to see these stacks, as they're called, these kind of environments, these setups, and ideally see create complete next to them. Create complete good, red is bad, as it usually is. So I see mine, I see, now I see more data coming in. Now what I should be able to do here is I'm it should, I waited a few minutes. I should be able to go into Sumo Logic and I should start to see data being arriving. So how can I do that? I can do this in two ways. I can go to the black bar and I can go to manage data and I can go to collection. And what I should see here is training to collector. So what's happening is this collector has been set up and now Sumo Logic knows or has permission to go ahead and grab from my training to stack the ALB data, the CloudTrail data, the CloudWatch data, and so on and so forth. It's going to get more data. This list will become longer, but I'm starting to see that data in the system already. So this is a positive indication that I did something right. At least the connection is established. I'm going to go back to my CloudFormation template, just kind of check in, see how things are going. Things are going good. So then let's go a little bit deeper, or not necessarily deeper, but let's, yeah, I guess deeper is a fine adjective. So what we're going to do here is we can now go to new and explore. Now we saw this view earlier, kind of, I showed it quickly, but now we're going to use it to our benefit. Here we have the ability to explore by a bunch of different views. Today, we're not talking about Kubernetes, so we're probably not going to use the Kubernetes view. Specifically today, we're going to use the AWS Observability view. So I'm going to select Explore by AWS Observability. And what I should see, I was hoping to see it already, is I should start to see my training data come in here. And I think I jumped the gun. I got a little too excited. And it's still creating, so I think I was just ahead of myself here. But ultimately, we should start to see that data arrive in here. Yeah, I need to give it a few more minutes. But as I refresh this, we see more data come in. Well, it's still about the same. And we start to see a graphical representation of that data arriving. So this graph right here is showing me, well, there was no data, and now there's been data over the last hour. And let me refresh the Explorer. Still not there. Okay, it's coming along. So I guess, can you certainly, if you can confirm to me that you were able to follow along with these steps so far, would be helpful. So at this point, we should have set up the template, and we should be our stack should be being created now. In hindsight, I probably should have done this step first and then taken the break. So I apologize for that. Yeah, bad timing on my part. But the creation is going. All right, let me see here. Now, because there's a couple things I still want to show here. All right, still waiting for that. Perfect. Here's what I was looking for. In the black bar, if you go to your personal folder, which is identified by a person, so black bar person, you should have an AWS Observability v2.20. It should have pretty much exactly what it says right here. Now, this is an example of an app. What is occurring right here is Sumo Logic is getting the data from AWS, and Sumo Logic is creating dashboards that we think will be helpful for this data. So these should, I'm crossing my fingers here, that there's data already in there. It's starting to come in. This is good. So what I'm now seeing, for example, here, perfect, is now for my training environment, my AWS training environment, here are all the request locations. So, worldwide map of where people are, requesting the app. I'm seeing 5xx error information. So earlier we had done the example of the 500 error codes. Well, I'm starting to see, in a honeycomb layout, that information. I'm seeing the amount of connections. I'm seeing those 500 errors. There they are. Now I'm seeing that spike that I was trying to find this morning. And so I am now getting all of this information through Sumo Logic, but with the benefit of Sumo Logic overlaying helpful things for me. So now to view, for example, my events of interest, we were talking about the EOIs earlier. I can now see, for my environments, these are the things that have been going on. Let's see, how are stacks doing? Yeah, still finishing up, so that's good. So hopefully you're seeing the same. If you do see something in red, which is an error, I mean, of course, it's mildly concerning, but don't freak out, I guess. The explanation of what went wrong should be good. This is an old one. This is not one I did, but it should, here we go. So here we start to see through the statuses what went wrong and can troubleshoot it. So in this case, there was an issue with availability zone that was entered incorrectly. But hopefully yours will show up as create complete entirely. With the setting that we set in that step 1, if it does not complete correctly and goes into red, what will happen is it will auto delete itself. So it will roll back itself, as you see in this example here, and then it will delete everything in Sumo Logic. So if for some reason, let's say right now it's still setting up Lambda, it's still setting up EC2, ECS. If right now it was setting up DynamoDB and hit some sort of problem, it would actually delete this app, delete the collector, and roll back its entire self, which is good for cleanup. Yeah, very good for cleanup. All right, so has anybody out there gotten to see their data in Sumo Logic? That's really kind of my goal here, to prove to you that through the lens of Sumo Logic, you can view AWS data and have a better view into observability and all the benefits of observability I talked about. So if somebody could tell me they are at least seeing something, that would make me feel better. And if you're not, that's fine too. Let me know as well, because yeah, I want to make sure that you're getting something from today. Yeah, quiet group, so I'm going to just assume things are going okay, which is fine. All right, so let's see where are we at then. Let's get back to our slide deck and kind of going to start to wrap up actually. Well, let's start to get there. So validating the setup, as I mentioned, the best ways to really validate that setup are to see that the collector is there, to see that it's active, to see that it's accepting data and was not accepting data before. That's going to be a big feature. That means data is arriving to Sumo Logic, which is half the battle. The other important portion, I think, is as we showed here, viewing the data. Well, the 2 steps will be viewing the data through the dashboards, which I did not demonstrate yet, but viewing the data through the apps you are able to see. So let's see if I can view it through the Observability Dashboard, which is really the big reveal. Let's see. So new, explore. There it is now. Okay, cool. So to view these, you're just going to go to new and explore, and then your new one, or it might be your only one, should be there. And as described, it should show up. It might still be loading data, so this might not be fully populated yet. But what I'm now seeing is, for example, just from an admin standpoint or an activity standpoint, I'm seeing 2 users, from the West Coast. Well, that's, this is about where I live. So this is me. And then this is, I don't know who that is. That might just be Nova, just fake data there. But I now see that this is me, and if this was a concern, like I know that people are logging in remotely or what have you. As we drill in, we can go to the US East 1 data, and now we can start to view our DynamoDB data. Once again, it still may be loading, and also my test environment is not great. My AWS is idle most of the time, so that's why a lot of these dashboards are going to be blank. This just doesn't get much use. but it's still loading as well. So if we go back to the CloudFormation template and we go back to our stacks, we should see, let's see how far along we are. So we've created all these. I think we're just about done. It usually has one last kind of ta-da, everything is finished. Create complete. No, we're good. Oh, here it is. So yeah, this one is now set up. So now I have my training stack is completely set up, and now I can view it within Sumo Logic. And so that's really the big, ta-da, the big reveal for today is that functionality and that ease of use or ease of setup. And hopefully that came across. Let's see, anything else in here? A couple more things. Metrics rule, not super important, just some rules, and I alluded to this, are going to be created automatically. So you may notice, and I should have pointed this out as well as a validation step, is you may now have field extraction rules. These were created today. You may also have metrics rules created as well. Just the system does that automatically. And that's one of the steps that you can decide on if you don't want it to set them up through the options here. So while we did have it set up, if you don't want it to create a CloudTrail log source for whatever reason, you can say no. All right, so that's important to note that some rules are going to be set up. The metrics rules, the field extraction rules automatically set up. I'd encourage you just to not touch them. It's really best advice. And then we don't really need to know. All right, so I think that's really going to start to wrap us up today. Certainly want to once again point you to the help article. The observability solution is really the best place to start. So it's the same, pretty much the same place I pointed you to get to the CloudFormation template, but that documentation is going to go through everything as far as as it says here about AWS observability, which I hope I kind of sold you on or you bought into or whatever. What you need to deploy. So before you deploy, having these couple prerequisites. As mentioned, if you are using Control Tower, we have an integration guide that works with it. Just I'm not in my little fake environment, so I don't have anything good to show through Control Tower. And then once again, deploying AWS observability is just really following these steps, and then you're off. All right, I'll go ahead and open it to questions, comments. Just somebody confirming they're still live out there. Someone just ping in the chat. You can hear me, right? Okay, thank you guys. I was starting to sweat for a second until Dan said still alive. I got very nervous when I jokingly said you can hear me. Good. So yeah, I don't want to keep us longer than we need to be. So this was the presentation today. So hopefully, like I said, you understand more about within Sumo Logic, within linking AWS and Sumo Logic. Any questions, of course, reach out to us at Sumo Logic. Dilip is here for the AWS questions, but we're happy to take those questions, and if we need to route you to him or someone in his team, can do so. So best place always start with if you have a Sumo Logic contact, a rep, a salesperson, they're the best bet. Otherwise, probably just send something to support. If you want to get in touch with us, you can even send it to training at Sumo Logic and ask a question, and we'll get you the right people. So thank you again for attending. I apologize for the bumpiness with that Root Cause Explorer demo. It was working a few hours ago. That's what happens when we do things live. So once again, thank you for attending, and hopefully you enjoyed the little time we had together. So thank you again. And I'll probably, I'll wait probably just a minute or two, but I'll disconnect the session in 3 minutes. So if there's any last minute questions, feel free to, hop in with them. Don't be shy. Otherwise, we'll see you all at the next session. So we got one question. So there was a question by Eric. Oh, I guess names aren't necessary. Either way, about required or suggested AWS tags for use in Sumo Logic. So the default tags are pretty good, but you can go ahead and modify them. Where was the link? Let's see, I think I have a slide on it. Should then be an appropriate documentation on it. Here, I'll send this link. This the AWS metadata tag sources. Not good enough is really what you need. So let me paste that in. So Eric, that should help. If it doesn't, just give us a shout. And no, I mean this is what I'd send you to actually. So this should be it. Thank you. All right, last call for questions, comments, feedback, grievances. All right, thank you again, everybody, for joining. We'll catch you at the next one of these. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Bye, all.